Ambassador McFaul, let me start with you. What do you make of what we heard from President Putin in these remarks that he delivered?
I think Putin's trying to do what Prigozhin was trying to do 3 days earlier with the Russian conventional army. He's trying to divide the leaders of Wagner from the soldiers. He's saying to the soldiers, you were deceived by your leaders. They tricked you into doing this mutiny. Come back to us. Join our forces. But he's throwing the leadership under the bus. He's saying they were traitors. They led this mutiny and trying to put a divide there. And that suggests to me that they're not having success in getting those Wagner mercenaries to lay down their weapons and join the conventional forces. Otherwise, why would he make such an extraordinary speech?
Ambassador, is Vladimir Putin weakened in this moment and by this, what was an attempted rebellion, but obviously was cut off?
Without question. I mean, anytime you have two different armies that are supposed to be loyal to the president threatening to fight each other, that's not a good look. It's not a good look that people on the streets of Rostov were cheering for Mr. Prigozhin and his soldiers. And then he took the hard decision, right? He did not escalate. I think this is very important to understand. He could have gone after them and used force. He decided to negotiate with somebody who only hours earlier he had called a traitor, and he thought it was all done. But tonight suggests it's not all done. And that's why he is going out of his way with this extraordinary speech to try to divide the Wagner soldiers from their commanders. And I don't know if he'll be successful.
Lieutenant General Hodges, weigh in on that point. What do you make of what we heard and the fact that he's trying to, as Ambassador McFaul has said, alienate and separate Prigozhin from his fighters? Will it be effective?
Well, first of all, everything that we've seen over the last 72 hours is not the kind of thing you would see from an army that feels confident that it is on a path to victory. So the fact that this has happened reveals enormous fault lines and friction between the different military forces inside Russia. They all hate each other. The regular army always has hated mercenaries as much as they hate Chechens and the FSB intelligence service. And so that really has come out. I think the ambassador is correct, of course, that President Putin realizes he needs those thousands of Wagner fighters. I mean, it will be a real challenge for them to replace the 10, 15, 20,000, however many there really are, the experienced soldiers. The Russians need them. And so there's a practical reason for this as well as for his own preservation.
And Lieutenant General Hodges, just let me follow up with you on that point. You talk about the divisions inside Putin's inner circle. This is something we've been reporting on since Russia's war in Ukraine first began. Is this something that exposes those divisions, exacerbates them? I mean, could this ultimately lead to a change at the top?
Well, the fact that Minister Shoigu is still the defense minister is a clear indicator that for now, President Putin values loyalty more than he does competence. I mean, it'd be hard to find a defense minister more incompetent than Mr. Shoigu based on how the Russian Ministry of Defense has performed over the past several years. The fact that they were unable to stop this 400-vehicle convoy that left Rostov, headed past Voronezh en route to Moscow, that there was nobody there to even stop them, tells you what terrible shape they're in. But maybe at some point, Shoigu is gone, Gerasimov is gone. But the problems that they have are so deeply embedded in the corruption of the culture that it's going to take more than just getting a really good Minister of Defense in there.
Yeah, Ambassador McFaul, pick up on that point. I mean, yes, Defense Minister Shoigu is still in his position of power, but do you think there are people behind the scenes who are angling for Putin's job? And do they see an opening right now?
There may be people thinking about it and thinking he's a bad leader. I think there are a lot of people in Russia thinking he's a bad leader and especially did a tremendous damage to Russia's economy, to its security, to its standing in the world by invading Ukraine. That said, I don't see any indications that there's another Prigozhin-like figure waiting to overthrow Putin. Tragically, I think Putin will hold on for much longer than this. But make no mistake, he's holding on as a weak leader. This is an extraordinary set of events that he's never faced before in his 23 years of ruling. And that today, he had to double down with the second plea. He's begging these soldiers. And I don't want to call them soldiers. That's an insult to real soldiers. He's begging these mercenaries, these thugs, these killers to lay down their weapons and join him because they haven't done it. They didn't do it when he cut that first deal with Prigozhin. That's a sign of desperation from Vladimir Putin, not a sign of strength.
This is taking place against the backdrop of Ukraine's counteroffensive. It has only recently gotten underway. But General Hodges, what are the implications for Ukraine here? Obviously, President Zelensky, we heard an emboldened message from him over the weekend.
Well, of course, anytime your opponent is having real difficulty with their command structure and there's chaos and people don't trust each other, this is a good thing for Ukraine. I don't expect the Russian army is just going to collapse now, but I think the divisions that have been exposed. And by the way, I think Putin does not know who to trust right now. There's a lot of military that should have been out in the streets, immediately to defend the country, to defend the regime. And they pretty much sat on their hands. The fact that Rostov was taken so quickly and easily, I think a lot of people have been exposed here. So there's going to be some opportunity, I think, for the Ukrainians through the use of information. Mr. Reznikov has already been reaching out directly to Russian soldiers saying, you don't have to die here. The real enemy is back in Moscow. Leave or surrender, and you will live. So I think that's part of what's going on here. But at the end of the day, the Ukrainian forces are going to continue their counteroffensive. The main attack has not started yet. They're still working to create vulnerabilities. When they do find those, then I think you're going to see a very strong armored force exploit those vulnerabilities.
Ambassador McFaul, could this be a turning point in the war in Ukraine, given that the counteroffensive is underway? What do you make of this moment?
It could. I don't think in the immediate run, but maybe in the long run. And the thing that I would be most concerned about if I were Putin is what is the morale of those soldiers dug in inside Ukraine? Because Prigozhin made a very dramatic speech telling them that they'd been deceived, that there was no threat from NATO, there was no threat from Ukraine. Your commanders have deceived you. And if you're sitting there watching this fiasco, you're sitting there watching where your commanders did not take charge. They did not fight to crush this mutiny. They dealt with that. They did a deal with them. You've got to be wondering, why am I here? And I think, to General Hodges' point, that is the messaging that the Ukrainians, President Zelensky himself did it. That's a message that they want to be stressing. I think that could be the pivotal point, not the actual ability to fight, but the will to fight. If it doesn't look like your generals are backing you, why should you stay the course?
All right. Well, just incredible analysis. Thank you both, Ambassador McFaul and Lieutenant General Hodges. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.